Hey there, this is Pastor Tabitha Purple. We are on day 26 and we are looking at the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 9 and 10. So that's the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 9 and 10. We're going to dig straight in. And it says this: by faith he stayed as a foreigner. So who is the he? The he is Abraham. So by faith he stayed as a foreigner in the land of promise, living in the tents as did Isaac and Jacob, co-heirs of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. This is really interesting. You see, I grew up in a tradition, or in my family, my mum's tradition was to really teach us the biblical narrative. We grew up non-denominationally, but as Christians, my mum had moved from an island to a bigger island, the UK. And so she grew up kind of detached from the churches. I grew up very detached from a local community in some ways, and also very rooted in a local community. It's weird. Anyway, story for another time. The point being that what was really important to my mother was teaching us the biblical narrative and story. So she took every opportunity she had to read to us, to share with us Bible stories, to give us this narrative. And so when we look at some of these New Testament stories and they have promises that are rooted in the Old Testament, I have some frame of reference. And one of the frame of references for this is looking at, this is the Abraham story, and it talks about Abraham's sons as well, and it talks about the promise of land. Now, I have to be honest with you, this is something that I think needs to be studied at length. I think it is naive to believe that you can read one verse and understand what land means to an entire people. So I'm just going to share with you what land means to me, okay, and hope that it will give you an idea of why you shouldn't just read this one verse and think you understand land in the Bible. So I grew up in inner city London. And we didn't own our own home, and that was a source of distress for my mother. It was a source of conflict, I think, for her with others. She believed that people judged us badly for that. She believed that boys would judge me badly for that, that men, when I got old enough to start dating, wouldn't want a girl whose parents didn't come from wealth, who didn't have money, who didn't own property. And she always had this kind of feeling that that was going to be really negative. And that really did affect me. It affected the way I dated. It definitely affected who I brought into my life. I tried my best not to bring anyone into my life. I did date eventually, and had a very lovely boyfriend as my first boyfriend. Wonderful guy. He accepted my situation, but there was a real difference between me and him. And he came from two parents who had a loving home, who owned their own property, and I didn't. And I always felt nothing to do with him or his beautiful family. I'm going to say that up front. All to do with me. I always felt like I didn't fit and I didn't belong. I always felt like, problem, you don't come from the same situation and you don't understand what's happening. You don't get it. You're missing something. And it really affected the way I interacted with him. And in the end, I self-sabotaged and just broke the relationship. And it took me a long time to move beyond that and to move to a place where actually I realized that my idea of owning your own home was so ingrained in me that you should do this, that this was important and it gave value to who you were as a person. Like if you didn't own your own home, this would be bad. But I had been taught no way of how to do that. Like I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So years would pass and I wouldn't be able to do this. And I continually felt like I was really a loser, and not helped by the fact that I met people who believed that too and who would tell me that. Like I remember a friend is a bit of a loose term, but an acquaintance who let me know that I was a loser because when we were at university, he was buying property and I wasn't. And so what kind of person just got into debt for nothing or just, threw away money? And I think I didn't have the confidence to understand that freedom that comes with land, the freedom that comes with money is really different. And so my history really allows me kind of an insight into the fact that land is important. Owning houses and property is important, but it's not more important than people. and that God really wants to invest in who we are and develop who we are. And we will develop who we are at the pace that he wants to go. And land still becomes something. I talk about it with my kids, owning property and owning our own home and doing our own thing. I still have those dreams and talk about those with my kids and still talk about what we would do. But at the same time, I don't want to instill in them the loss, the sense of lack, and the sense of not being like enough that I had. And so I think there's that real disparity between those two positions. So when I read a text like this, when it talks about Abraham inheriting, looking forward to a place where the owner, the builder, the architect is not human and is God, for me it gives me a sense of peace. It gives me a sense of like a relief kind of floods through me that actually it will be okay. And I'm kind of being really honest and transparent about my life, and I'm regretting it because you all can judge me in the comment section, I'm sure. And if I disable the comment section, it's because I got judged far too much and I can't take it. But I think it's scary, but it's wonderful to think that there is someone, God, who actually loves us enough to take care of the thing that is so basic to humanity, the need for a home, the need for a place to call our own, that whole identity. Now, I can't speak to all the context of land because land is a huge issue in the Hebrew Bible. But what I can tell you is for a girl who came from inner city London, who had nothing, who grew up just idolizing living on her own property, who grew up wanting to have that it means a lot to me to serve a God who thinks about that, who cares about that, and is able to deliver that in a way that no human ever could. Have a great day. Bye-bye.